Hi, I'm 21, I'm 173 centimeters, 50 kilograms. I smoke, spend lots of time gooning and playing video games. Every morning I wake up exhausted and sometimes wishing for the end of the day as soon as possible. I don't want relationships or dating, I just want to sleep, smoke, play, and do nothing. I want practical tiny steps I can start the day to stop drifting and feel a bit better. What routines, food choices, or even 10 to 15-minute actions have actually helped you get more energy and motivation? No vague motivational speeches. I need concrete things I can try this week. Thanks. So, reading this, I realized that, some of this I can relate to back, a good few years ago when I was in a really bad rut where every single sort of day I'd be waking up and just, yeah, pretty much feeling similar to this guy, not really wanting to do anything, just feeling completely drained, and anything, relatively productive felt like a massive jump for me to do. So the first thing I will say is this could come down to a few problems, right? Obviously, we don't know what he's eating, we don't know, what he's taking in, but what I do know is that part of this is probably affecting by dopamine, right? Because he's saying, for example, he's playing video games, and I'm assuming, right? He says he spends a lot of time doing that. So for me, obviously, with video games, that is obviously going to trigger dopamine release. Now, it very much depends on when you're playing them and how much. So for this guy, right, for example, like I know for me, if I play video games in the morning, literally the first thing when I wake up, and I play that for however many hours, trying to get something done afterwards feels impossible because of dopamine, right? It's because you've gotten those hits, you've gotten the easy reward or the easier reward. And so when it comes to doing anything, relatively productive, all of a sudden that becomes a very difficult task. So what I would say is that if you're gonna play video games, try and keep that to the evening, and obviously try not to overdo it. But the thing is, like, if you're doing it in the very early periods of the day, that's going to take a lot of sort of energy and such, and obviously more importantly, going to take the dopamine. And if your dopamine's already drained early in the morning, you're not going to feel like doing anything. So that's the one thing I would say, and that's one thing that I sort of changed, and that really helped me. The second thing I would say to this is, well, obviously stop smoking, but I don't have any experience with smoking, so it's easy for me to say that, but I don't really know so much about that. What I will say as well is I think dopamine the first one, right? Because I think a lot of people don't really think about that. And in terms of actually sort of what I would do as well is start setting small commitments, right? So, for example, right, if it, like for this guy, I mean, I'm not sure sort of what he does for exercise, but I definitely recommend having some sort of regular routine for exercise. Now, if you're a guy that hasn't really touched it so much, or you've thought about it, maybe you thought about going to the gym, but you haven't done anything. Literally, it could even be just like start by doing 10 press ups a day. Like it could be 10 press ups, 10 body weight squats, 10 sit ups a day or something, right? And I literally had a friend, and I've talked about this a few times, but I literally had a friend who just started doing stuff like that for the first couple months. And then eventually he bought himself some dumbbells. And then eventually he sort of bought a few more things for a home gym. Point being, he started very small. And I think for people like this, which just seem completely drained of their dopamine, of just all sort of energy, having micro commitments like that is really important, because what matters is that if you can slowly start turning up and doing micro commitments, hell, it could even be 5 press ups a day. Sounds stupidly small, but sometimes I think going that small is really good. You do 5 press ups, next day maybe 6, next day 7, right? And then within a week or so, perhaps you're even doing 15 a day. All of a sudden, you've now built a habit that is actually meaningful to you, right? So that is what I would say in terms of building micro habits. Now, of course, then the next thing is in terms of, well, what is he eating, right? Because for me, I find, look, if you're eating something that isn't actually natural, chances are there's some sort of additive or ingredient or something that's processed in there that, generally speaking, isn't going to be good for your health. Right now, for me, I predominantly eat just an animal-based diet. This being steak, eggs, fish. I'll have fruit. I'll have, cheese, milk, that sort of stuff, right? Ideally speaking, it's pretty much just whole ingredients for the most part. And that, I mean, I've been following that for probably about a good year, maybe year and a bit now. And that I've been feeling really good on, right? I have energy, I don't have brain fog, I rarely get bloating. On that diet, I feel good with it. So that's what I would say. So I think overall, what I'm really just thinking about when I look at this guy's stuff for this video is a few things. First of all, I think dopamine is probably one of the biggest things that this guy is not considering. And if you're in a similar position to this guy, or you can relate, then this is just what I would say based on my experience. First of all, if you're someone that, for example, likes to play video games, I'm not going to say to stop. But I will say is to shift it ideally to the evening or later in the day, like much later in the day, and ideally don't overdo it. Pretty simple, just because it's a matter of actually not immediately stimulating yourself. Now, obviously, the other thing as well is also, for example, how much he's using his phone. Is he scrolling on social media? When he wakes up, does he lie in bed and scroll, right? That stuff is also going to stimulate the dopamine, making everything else feel very difficult. And I know for myself, when I sort of got up and started, going on my phone for the first hour when I woke up, the moment I put my phone down, I already felt groggy. So make sure that you're not doing anything that is stimulating online in the morning, and ideally leave that late into the evening. Second thing is exercise. I think if you're not doing regular exercise at the moment, set very small micro commitments and build on them. And then the third thing is obviously what you're eating. And all I'll really say for this is just look at the ingredients of the stuff that you eat, and please tell me that you understand what those are and what those do. And often what I'll do is that if you're not familiar with the ingredients in your food, just literally search up the thing and then search up like dangers or search up the issues. Because generally speaking, I think that there's so much additives in food nowadays that don't need to be in there. So what I would recommend is just eat whole foods as much as possible, right? Just actually eat real stuff, right? That being meat, eggs, fruit, like that sort of stuff. So hopefully you found this video useful. Let me know if you have a similar experience with this guy. 'Cause I think when just looking at this, right, I can relate, with that whole idea of just, low energy, unmotivated, don't really want to do anything. And that's totally fair. But I think as well, it's like, this is exactly why, the whole idea of, just do it, just work harder. It just doesn't work for these type of people, and even for myself back then. So that's what I really would look at. Look at your dopamine and look at what's happening with that. Look at your exercise and, build something consistent with that, and then look at what you're eating. I think if you fix those three things, I will guarantee, or at least I believe, that you're going to be at least having more energy than what you did before. So let me know your thoughts on this, and I'll chat soon.